Okay. So we're off and running here. And first off, Tricia, I just want to thank you for joining us tonight, and being willing to share a little bit about your career and your path. We're really happy to have you here, and we've just got some questions for you, and we'll work through together, I hope, and give our students at MSS a bit of a peek inside what you do and what it looks like.
Sounds great.
Awesome. Okay, for starters, can you just tell us right now what your current profession is, what you're working on?
Yes, so I'm currently an independent mortgage broker. So I have been brokering for about 2.5 years.
Awesome. As a mortgage broker, can you just tell us what do you do? What are your duties? What does your job kind of look like? What does a mortgage broker actually do?
Yeah, you bet. So I always like to tell people that I help people find their happy place. So for some individuals that's buying a home, many times it's first home, which is why they're coming to work with a mortgage broker. So the difference with my role now is that I really just represent the client. So I'm able to act independently for them and source mortgages with a lot of different lenders and institutions and credit unions to find the best possible solution. So I also do private lending. So for those who don't fit into conventional boxes, there's been lots of regulatory changes in the last several years. So I also do a bit of private lending. So as a broker, that's most of my most of my job in a nutshell is helping people with their homes. Lots of times too will be refinancing. So when people have a mortgage coming up for renewal, I would help them potentially either renew it with their existing lender or find a different place for their mortgage. So a study recently by Mortgage Professionals of Canada actually ranked home buying as most stressful thing you can go through. So more stressful than marriage, more stressful than having a baby. People put buying real estate at the top. So I also tell people I'm a little bit of like a counselor. So guiding people through that process. It's not really just the finances. I like to go through because there's lots of questions and different things happening with real estate. Some people might be looking at buying rental properties and looking to invest in different things. So I'm also able to help with those types of purchases or financing as well. So that's the majority of my day. And then lots of it too is just staying up to date with what lenders are offering, what rates are always changing, rules are always changing. So that's kind of, I guess, in a nutshell, what I do.
Awesome.
Can I jump in with a question?
Sure.
Just wondering if we can backtrack a bit, because I know, especially for some students, they may be confused, like what exactly is a mortgage? Is there a way you can put it in simple terms for those that may be a little bit baffled by that term?
Yes, absolutely. So when it comes to that home that you probably lived in with maybe your parents for so long, it's tough because right now with the prices of homes, and in Merritt we're fairly lucky, I guess, that downtown Vancouver for a lot of, say, students, right? If you're going to go maybe look at purchasing your first home, the average price of a home now is like $500,000 in a lot of places. So how do you do that? How do you buy a house? So walking through for people, how to save. So for a lot of clients that I actually work with, I'll maybe connect with them, and we're not actually getting a mortgage until several years later. So we're talking about how they're going to save up enough money for their down payment. The lawyer alone who's going to help you just sign the paperwork to get your first home is going to be $2,000. So there's lots of steps that we do leading up to it. And then once you were to purchase your first home, so you've got your mortgage in place, most people take a period of 25 years. So that's the rule that the government has come up with, is that you have 25 years to then sort of pay off that mortgage. And as a ballpark figure, I usually tell individuals for every sort of $100,000 that you're borrowing, it's going to be about $500 for your mortgage payment. So if you think about it, if you're maybe paying rent, most students, I know for me, when I first moved out, I had a roommate and we found a place. We thought it was great because I think it was like $1,200 and we could each pay, our $600 and have our bedroom, but share our bathroom. And really, I mean, $600, that would get you $100,000. And what's $100,000 going to buy you these days, right? So it's a really big shift. Yeah. So going from a lot of people renting, and then how do you even buy your first home? Absolutely great question, Jennifer. Is how does that happen? So yeah, so lots of times too, I'm working with people, much further ahead of time. And that's where I feel fortunate with my background in finance, having done time at a bank and at a credit union, and then really sort of narrowing into mortgages now. I think that's beneficial because I love working with people and being able to kind of guide them through that process, because especially in today's day and age, how do you save? How do you save your, your $30,000 that you need to even just buy your first condo, right? Yeah.
Yeah, so I was just wondering, maybe we can backtrack a little bit on that. I'm kind of taking these questions a bit out of order, but
Well, that's okay.
you touched upon it. But sort of, what was your pathway that you took to get to this current occupation? Like, how did you figure out what was your education, and where did you get into the whole job market?
Into financing. Yeah. So in high school, there was an accounting program that was offered in high school. So I took that, and I always excelled in math. I knew that math was sort of an easier subject for me. I enjoyed it. So naturally, I thought something along the route of accounting. So I went to OUC back before there was UBCO in Kelowna. That's where I was from. And I knew that I wanted to do something, business related. I really thought I'd be into more accounting. And then as I dug into the accounting side of things more, I thought, you know what, an accounting firm's going to hate me, because as much as I love numbers, I also love talking. So I'm a very social person. I love interacting with people. So in my first year of schooling, I actually got a job at TD. So it was a great fit because it was sort of banking. They're open later, so I was able to work after school, right? So I do like the 4 till 9 on Thursday, Friday nights, and then Saturday throughout the day. So that was a really good fit. And with banking, I loved it because it was that balance of numbers and then also that that personal part, right? So the social part. So the position with TD, sort of an entry-level position in banking, you don't necessarily have to have like that degree or that background, right? You can get an entry level. A lot of that is customer service. And then for my first job ever, I was 15 years old. I worked at McDonald's. So, you got to start somewhere. And honestly, like those skills at McDonald's that I learned, I think were able to help me continue to better myself. So, from McDonald's, it was Starbucks. And then from Starbucks, it was over to TD, right? And so kind of transitioning that way. And the position with TD, I was able to obtain, I had met a woman during some of my volunteering in grade 12. So that was a really important thing too, is being engaged with the community and getting out there and making those connections. And she was the one that said to me, when you turn 19, you come see me at the bank. And if we have an opportunity, we'll be able to bring you on board. So doing those things, I think, to set yourself apart is really key. And then, yeah, within TD, I was able to sort of work my way up and go through some sales positions and some people management. I really loved managing people. And then, yeah, after 12 years at TD, we were able to relocate to Merritt, and I transitioned over to a credit union. So a bit of a different beast, very community driven, which for me was an excellent fit. I love doing stuff within the community, so that was great. And then, yeah, along came family. So these little guys right here. So for me too, being a broker, it's that flexibility. And I read the book, The 4-Hour Work Week, that is week, right? 4-Hour Work Week. And that was really, that really opened my mind to what is possible. And I always thought too, being stuck in an office, I mean, I was able to do way more than what other people in my role were doing within the same amount of time. I'm very efficient. I like embracing technology. I love streamlining, so does it make sense? Why am I sitting in this office, from 8:30 until 4:30? If I can get a job done faster, doesn't that make sense? And also the ability to, first and foremost, to be the flexibility, but then the income too, right? I mean, you're being immediately benefited by the work that you put in. So there's pros and cons. Being self-employed now, I don't have a pension and I don't have benefits, right? So I pay the dentist when I go. So I've seen both sides of that. But yeah, I just think too, for me, when people would sit around and say they've been with their job for, 20 years or 30 years, I think like great for them. But to me, that sounds like a death sentence. Like I love change. I like always growing and doing different things. So if it wasn't something being done for me career-wise, like a new position or doing something different, I'd always find a new way to challenge myself. Is there a course that I can take? Is there something different that I can be doing to constantly be growing? I kind of like that saying about how only dead fish go with the flow. So so yeah, so I just think for me, like that really fits my personality, and especially now brokering, it's good because I can still have that sort of social part and being connected with clients and different lenders and underwriters, and then also sort of going through that process too of like the numbers, right? Qualifying people, looking at their income versus their debt payments. So it's a good fit.
Awesome. Tricia, I think you touched on it just a little bit, but could you tell us, what does your typical workplace look like?
Yeah, so this is my workplace now. So my last 4 or 5 years working at the bank, the conversation was a lot about the death of the branch. And I think for a lot of high school people that are maybe watching this, have they ever even been into a bank, maybe when they opened their account or for the odd time? But if you had told me when I started in banking, whatever it was, 17 or 18 years ago, that one day people would use a phone to deposit a check, I think that you were crazy. So so yeah, so for me now, I mean, so much of what I do is remote and virtual, and that's very important for me. So I've been able to sit on the beach in Jamaica and work. Right. So for some people, and I guess that's maybe a pro and con. I know that was mentioned in the questions. So the con with being self-employed is you don't get any time off, right? So I didn't sit on the beach and not be able to worry about work. You're always turned on, right? Like I even had documents come through to me on Christmas Day this year, right? So it really is 24/7, but it's my 24/7. It's the hours within those 24 hours that I choose, right? So if I'm up at 5 and I work till 7, right? And then I'm gonna go and get the kids ready for school or go for a run, right? So I like that I have that flexibility. So yeah, so now I do a lot of things remote, and a ton to just really embracing technology. So these new systems where it's an app on my phone. People don't like, there used to be a day and age where I had paper files, right? And now I have no paper. I try to be as paperless as possible. Everything is digital. I don't like paper. So I scan everything. And then even before, people would be like, who has a scanner? Who even has a computer or a laptop even, right? We have phones. So, it seems like there's always something shifting. So now I have a program that I just started with. So clients can basically just take pictures with their phones and it uploads it onto the portal where I'm submitting applications to lenders. So an important thing for me has been, embracing technology. How can I make that really streamline my work? I like operating outside of that conventional 9 to 5, also from a client's perspective, because I think how do they do it? Like people are working throughout the day or they have busy lives, right? So I have people that'll call me in the evening or early in the morning, or I text with my clients, right? Like, which I think is nice because how do you call somebody, in a branch between these hours? So so that's kind of like a typical day. Lots of emails, probably mostly texting. I don't get many like phone calls. Most people want to text or email, more so text than even email now. But then there's something to be said too about a quick phone call, right? So lots of the calling that I'll do would be touching base with people in regards to applications I have coming through that I want to know if there's an appetite for it, right? I don't like wasting time, right? Time wasters. So if I know that there's something kind of outside of the box, I'd rather just pick up the phone and call people to run it past them than spend a bunch of my time, putting something through and then, you should have just called. It's a no-go. We don't lend in Logan Lake or something like that, right? So, so that's most of my day, I guess.
Awesome. How about some things that we kind of talked about this a bit already, but just things you really like and then maybe don't like so much about your occupation right now?
Yeah, so my favorite part definitely is helping people. I'd say for me, the most rewarding transaction would be when I help people refinance, because anyone can go and get 50 to $100,000 in unsecured debt, whether it's credit cards or loans, right? So for a lot of people, it's when I'm able to sit down with them and put a really good financial plan into place, and release some of that stress. Money is stressful. So for me, being able to really help people eliminate that stress and work within a plan is really rewarding. So I really like that. I think it's interesting with where policies are changing and how that can impact clients. So there's things there that I enjoy advocating for. So for example, does it make sense that, you know, a 70-year-old man can get the same length of a mortgage, I talked earlier about 25 years, as the 25-year-old or the 30-year-old buying their first home, especially now that homes are so expensive. So for me, I really enjoy following some of that regulatory stuff, and more from how is it going to impact the people that I help. In the past, I did enjoy managing people. So I have transitioned my job now where there's a pool of us brokers, especially because in Merritt, I'm kind of by myself. So there's one in Red Deer, there's a couple in Kamloops, there's one in Kelowna. So I really like when we are able to brainstorm and collaborate together, because I really think some of the best ideas are the ones that have already been, you know, invented or somebody else is doing, right? So trying to sort of share and go back and forth on some of those things. So yeah, I enjoy that. I'd say the most difficult part sometimes is balance. So knowing sort of when to turn the work switch off is sometimes hard, especially when you are, you know, really driven to be successful. But I am a very big advocate for taking breaks. I hate people who are clock watchers. So that always kind of irks me, right? When it's like,
Yeah.
oh, like 30, no, I can't help that person, right? 30 seconds until my lunch, right? Like I'd be the person in the lunchroom. Like if a team member came to me and asked for help, I'd be tripping over my chair to go and help them, right? So that for me sometimes is a bit of a hard thing to kind of come over, right? Is sort of finding that balance. And then also, yeah, balancing, I think, family as well. And I've always been really big, even before we had kids, that people's downtime is their downtime. It doesn't matter if you've got 18 kids or no kids, or if you've got furry kids, because I always had one of those, right? So yeah, kind of finding, I think that balance is always really, really difficult. Yeah, and I guess for me too, it's just sometimes like being a perfectionist is a difficult thing. And we're our own worst critics, so sometimes cutting myself a little bit of slack is a challenging thing too. And that's where I think surrounding yourself with your cheerleaders and your mentors and people that you can, you know, go to sometimes. And I've got some great collaboration people that I've met throughout the years that are in sometimes totally different lines of work. And it's interesting, sometimes they'll say something that I just, you know what I mean? I can reflect somewhere different, or, you know, kind of look at it from a different perspective. So that for me too is definitely a pro, is networking. I love networking, connecting with people, sometimes placing different people together too, right? In different lines of work, or being able to find those types of connections, like collaborating, I guess too, is something that I enjoy. So sometimes that's a con, as I don't do that as much now. So that's kind of hard, right? Now I'm just kind of helping people with their mortgages.
Some of what you said sort of triggered a few things with me. One of our questions is, so can you tell us a little bit about some of the other occupations or professions you work with? You mentioned some of the other mortgage brokers, like in Kamloops, Kelowna, and Red Deer, but are there some other occupations that you frequently interact with in your work?
Yeah, absolutely. So I do work quite a bit with local realtors. So that's been important for me, especially to being a perfectionist and a people pleaser. I've really had to come to terms with the fact too that not everyone's going to love you, and you're not going to love everyone, right? So I'm really big though on, you know, I don't know if killing with kindness is the best kind of cliche to use, but you know, I always want to be the person where the 7 habits of highly effective people always really resonated with me, and it's starting with the end in mind. So for me, that's really important in any role that I'm in, is what do I want people to say about me maybe after I finish that role, or, so maybe not quite as far as being in my like coffin, right? Looking down on myself. But when people mention you, oh, Tricia Graham, that mortgage broker, what do I want them to say? So I need to make sure that my actions throughout the day are aligning with that. So working with different realtors in town, there's some that I love working with, and there's some that I tell myself that I love working with when I'm working with them. So that's how we roll with that. So realtors, I try to make it, and again, too, it's about the client experience. So regardless of my personality and maybe other people's, it's more about that client that we both have a mutual, interest in. So sometimes too, sort of shifting in the mindset about who's this really about, right? So keeping the client first and foremost. So working with realtors, I love working with people again too that are going to have the same values and morals that I have in my work and that I pride myself on. So when I have people that come to me and I've maybe helped them with their pre-qualification and then they're looking for who they want to work with, that's where it's important that I'll say, okay, these are the people that I really love to connect with, right? So finding that network of people that have that common mindset, right? We all want to be successful. We're all working with the same goal and the same type of work ethic, right? So I want realtors that are doing the same thing, right? Answering a phone call at 8 o'clock at night, or maybe up a little bit earlier, right? So that's a good fit for me. So realtors, lawyers, I have a really fabulous friend here in Kelowna who's a lawyer who I love working with. And she's fantastic. So I work with lots of lawyers, underwriters, lots of lenders are, I mean, they all want you to use them, right? They're all trying to build their business. So a lot of my business does go to, the business development managers at those lenders that are doing the most for me. Who are those people that are going out of their way to stay, connected? Is there something coming down their pipeline that they know about? Are they, fighting for a deal that I've sent to them because I really feel strongly about it? Because of course, there's in everything in life, there's a box, and you rarely are going to fit perfectly into that box, right? There's going to be things a little bit outside of it. So how are we building this application and trying to make it work? So those people that are working with me are the ones that I usually sort of work the most with too. And then appraisers. So I work with appraisers out of Kamloops. Anyone looking for a unique career in Merritt, there's no appraiser here in Merritt. So appraisals are actually quite costly for individuals because there's a travel fee that's also included in it. So it's been important for me to develop and maintain those relationships, because if I have a deal where I kind of need somebody to come out pretty quick and maybe they weren't planning on it, that type of relationship is important, right? So having that person that is maybe going to throw me a bone because a few times I was able to kind of scratch their back a bit, right? So appraisers, I send people to for house insurance. So even though it's that sort of outside of my realm, people always ask for recommendations there. So I help them sort of find an insurance representative. Also life insurance. So I'm a really big believer in estate planning. So that would include having your will or your power of attorney in place, your life insurance, because of life's what ifs, right? Whether you're buying your house by yourself or you have a partner. So I'll talk to people about life insurance. So there's investment advisors that I work with. And then, yeah, for me too, a lot of branches, because I will help them with their mortgage and then they're going to be going to that bank. So I want to know, who are they going to deal with? Or if they have a hiccup, who am I going to call? So I try to keep those connections to, I can't broker to some institutions. So I like to know, who am I going to deal with there? Because again, it's about the client. I want to get them the best possible mortgage. Sometimes it's with me and sometimes that's not. So for example, Royal Bank does not have a broker channel, right? So I would have to send people to Royal Bank, but I know some of their policies and the things that they'll do that I can't do. So I found a really good mortgage specialist within Royal Bank. So I know that, I don't want to just send them and then have them have a crummy experience. I want them to go and be really wowed, so that maybe not too wowed, because they don't want to don't send them, don't go there. But, they'll be able to remember and say, oh no, that's somewhere that my broker sent me, right? You should go and talk to Tricia. So, yeah.
Awesome. So if there's somebody in high school right now and they're thinking, hey, this sounds like kind of a cool career, what could you recommend to them for, like, what kind of courses should they be taking and what kind of experiences should they be seeking out to get themselves prepared for a career in a field like yours?
In finance, yeah. So I think a huge thing for me, to be honest, when I used to hire, so I've hired both like sales positions and then also customer service. So I think that a lot of people sometimes shy away from sales because they immediately go to that used car salesman who's going to be, you know what I mean, like pushing that broken car. And so I really try to shift people into thinking of it more from a service standpoint or an experience standpoint, right? And thinking about how, finances are so important for people, and we spend such little time talking about it. For some of these people, maybe they've never even sat down with their parents and talked about saving, right? So trying to think of it as more from a service perspective. And if you enjoy helping people, but you're more sort of inclined, I guess, similar to my background, where I like the business side of things. I like analyzing financial statements and those types of things, but still having some of that personal connection. And I think the great thing about finance is there's lots of different avenues that you can go, right? So there's the investment route, right? There's lending, there's people management. And then within all of that too, I mean, there's people that work within banks and credit unions that just work in finance. So they're the ones that are bundling those mortgages and then selling them on the investment market or marketing, right? So sometimes I think too, people think they have to go to downtown Vancouver and then go live there. But I think especially with the direction that we're going now, and somewhere like the credit union, their head office is Kelowna. So they have people that work in marketing right there that are coming up with the ads that you see, on YouTube or on your phone, right? Scrolling through Facebook. So really it's interesting too, because the days of like that vault in the bank and, all those kind of old school things. I used to love stamping. We used to stamp so much stuff in banking. We don't get to do so much of that anymore. So I think, yeah, looking for me when I'd hire, whether it was sales or service driven, is I'm looking for experience. Who would I want to sit in an office with? Right. So similar to that, who would I want to go for a drive with? If I had to drive to Kamloops, right? Like, would I enjoy my drive with this person? So anything like volunteer or community driven as well is huge. I think that speaks to someone's character and what's important to them. It could be a variety of different things, but I think putting yourself out there, right? Trying to step outside of your comfort zone a bit is important. Yeah.
What about course wise? Are there any courses you think they should, are definite musts? Obviously,
Yeah.
some math-based courses would be good.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think too, that's the nice thing about a lot of programs now, when you go into something sort of like business administration, or, lots of times you'll get like a little snippet of all of those things. So I think also being open to it's important, because if I just stuck with accounting and just been like, nope, like that was my plan and this is what I'm going to do, I don't think I would have been as open to it. And really for me too, like the management courses are what I ended up enjoying the most, which is probably why for a long time I was in people management. So I think finding a course too where it's going to give you maybe some bits and pieces, and even like work experience placements. And I know there's some different things throughout the school now. So I know in high school I went and spent some time at a golf course with a golf course manager, and also did like a little stint at an accounting firm. So those things are important. I remember I went with my mom to, she's a lab technologist, so I went to the hospital, and I remember thinking like, oh, thank goodness we go to places. But I thought it was good that I went to a place that I was like, oh yeah, definitely not for me. So so don't necessarily like, say that is never say never, right? But yeah, and definitely, yeah, math courses are going to be huge.
Yeah.
And then I think too, so another big thing as well that I can maybe say is the ability to public speak, because you're really always public speaking. So interview practice, people hate that. And I know, like, whether it's role playing or, you know what I mean? Like going through those actions where you're, pretending to be in an interview, or you're doing a presentation for your class, like get out there and do it, because you're going to have to, and it's going to be so terribly uncomfortable. But if you don't do it, then you're not going to get to where you want to go, right? So it's all panel interviews too, right? When you get to different positions. So it's like not just you and one other person, you're going to be interviewing to, 4 or 5 people. So if you haven't, I think, started doing that in your high school years and getting outside of your comfort zone, especially now that so many things have shifted to this digital world, and we're really powerful behind a cell phone when we're texting people. The people that are hiring you are the people like me, or even older, right? So it's like those are the people too that are going to want that connection, that ability to connect and have that experience, right? So yeah, if somebody in high school has an opportunity to do something similar to that, I know maybe public speaking is a little bit different right now, but even like a Zoom call, and knowing how to just speak in front of people, I think is important too. Yeah.
Great.
I know you mentioned some people kind of that you work with, and You've kind of touched on it a bit already, but is there a direction that you see your career, your profession headed in the future that somebody that's in high school might be moving into in the next 5 or 10 years, let's say?
Yeah, so I think with the way that we are embracing technology and the way that things are shifting so quickly, it'll be very interesting to see where things transition from here. But the other thing too with financing is, yeah, like for a lot of people, like IT has become such a huge component for banking, right? So whether it's coming up with the app for people to utilize, but then also being able to tie in some of those sales things. I know we're always so annoyed when we have to click through those things when we go to log in and we just want to get in, right? But so there's I think embracing more of that. And for me, it was all very sort of that part really wasn't as included in business when I was in school. I'm anticipating that it is more so now, but I think being as forward thinking as possible in those types of things. I mean, Bitcoin and how all of those things transition. There's been lots of talk too in the Canadian banking system, because right now banks don't talk to each other. So the banks own our information, right? And they say there's privacy rules and fair enough. But in Europe, for example, I own my banking information. So if I want to have an account with Royal Bank and TD and CIBC, I don't care how you guys figure it out, but that's my information and I want to access all of it and I want to do it easily. So in Canada, I think as things shift and change, maybe in the years to come, I think more and more is going to be driven towards technology. The same thing goes for even appraisals. So COVID has kind of fast tracked a lot of those things. So there was a lot of lenders using automated valuation systems. Is it perfect? No, but neither is a person going to appraise that property. There's also their own, opinion about things, right? So for a lot of lenders now, they're looking at that. Do we just use an automated system? And what information is important for us to utilize in order to get an accurate figure? And then furthermore with that, how can some people capitalize on it? So now there's individuals coming up with these companies that, brokers can spend money on. So a great example is when I ask people for a notice of assessment, more often than not, I get their property assessment, which is great, but it's not what I needed. So from a broker standpoint, it's a time killer. It's not the paperwork that I needed. Some really smart person thought, okay, well, actually, all you need to get somebody's notice of assessment from the Canada Revenue Agency is a signed document. So I'm going to come up with this system. I'm going to get this really slick email system going, and brokers are going to pay me $30 a pop because that's worth their $30 to get their documents right away. And there's a whole bunch of these things now, Snap NOA, Easy NOA. So I go in and I put in my email, I put in my client's email, and I think maybe like their first and last name, right? Like, and that's it. And this person, right? Like, or this machine sends this through to this person, they e-sign it and put in their social insurance number or whatever, right? That somehow is electronically sent to Canada Revenue. It releases the information. So then they get their notice of assessment and it comes into my email, into my inbox. So, and now I think to myself, shoot, why didn't I think of that? Like, that's a good idea, right? Like you'd have your computer doing all your work for you and you'd be making $30. And how many brokers every day across Canada are using the system? So there's things like that too, where it's like, if you can be the first one to think about it or think of a way to just do it better, there's some opportunity to be had there. So I think embracing technology and trying to think of things differently. And that goes as well for customer relationship management, right? So database usage, right? And it used to be that people were calling and you have these database systems that send emails and right, like, but what's that going to look like in the future, right? I don't think my clients are really going to want emails at some point. They're going to want a text. I know I love it when my dentist texts me. Isn't that the best? Because I'm like, oh yeah, right, I got my dentist tomorrow. So, maybe we should be texting people when their mortgage is up for renewal. Maybe we should text them on their payday and say, hey, you still didn't set up that savings plan that we talked about, right? Or did your $25 go into your savings account, right? So, those types of things, right? Like how is this future that we're headed into, which is very unknown, but looking like it's maybe more and more like this, us talking on our computers, right? Like with each other. How is that gonna unfold in the years to come? So that to me is interesting, and especially too for financial services, right? Like people used to have to go to the bank for cash. You don't even need cash now, right? You use your phone, right? Like, yeah. And to deposit a check. And again, it's the phone, right? So we're going to this cashless world. There's lots of talk about that, right? Like how long is cash going to stick around for? So yeah, it'll be an interesting financial world, I think, in the years to come.
Wow. Okay. I think maybe a great place to end our conversation is just if you have any broad advice for young people as they're, considering possible career choices and things that were important to you along the way, or any advice you can pass along.
Yeah. So I'll share two things. So first one is when I first had my job at McDonald's. So I remember my boss, he'd ask me probably to do something crappy, like go change garbages or go sweep the lobby floor or whatever. And, the usual answer to when people ask you to do something is, yep, sure, yeah, no problem. No problem. Well, was there a problem? Right. So he said to me, he's like, what was that, Tricia? You'd love to. That's great. So he would always bug me. And so whenever he asked me to do something, I'd always end up saying, I'd love to. I'd love to. But I think that there's something to be said about that. So even for me as a manager, people feel bad asking you for things, even though they shouldn't, right? So, and I know I was there before too, and you kind of got that maybe crusty boss, that crusty coworker, and like, you really need their help, and you go over. And I thought, I want to be the person that people are happy to come ask for help. And there's nothing better than when you ask somebody for help and they say that they'd love to. So the same goes, I think, for a lot of different things, right? Like when people are, and don't always say yes. I'm not saying be a yes person, but if somebody asks you, oh, do you mind staying late, or do you mind doing this or whatever, right? Like a great response is that you'd love to, because I think that really resonates with people. And I guess for me, being very outgoing and exuberant, that's an easy thing to say, but yeah, so saying that. And then I remember I went and did a career fair with one of my mentors, good friend, and we were talking about success. And for a long time for me, success was, what floor of the building is my office going to be on, right? Is it going to be on the top floor? Am I going to have the biggest office? Am I going to have the, and of course, if you're up there in those big offices, right, you're making the most amount of money. So, for me, I was very like job level driven, title driven, money driven. And so I gave my answer, right, about what success was. And then she said, for her, success was when she really was able to help people. And that really resonated with me. And it was whether it was helping her client or, helping a coworker, but a really good day for her or a successful day at the office was when she had really made a difference. And it took me a couple of years, but that stuck with me. And I get that now, because it's the same for me. It's, at the end of the day, you're going to get, paid, and that's great if you can make lots of money. I mean, that whole thing too about like money, where's that balance? It's a lot easier to do the things that you love doing, which bring you happiness, when you have money. But I think more important than that is, what sort of impact are you having? Who have you helped that day? And so for me, being able to help people with their finances, that's really rewarding, and I enjoy it.
Awesome. Jennifer, any last questions before we sign off?
Sure. You just had me intrigued when you were talking about how there's just no appraisers around. Like they're really in high demand, and there's no one in merit. Would someone that was interested in going into that particular career path, would they take similar training to what you've taken, or is there more of a specific route they should be looking at?
No, so appraising. So with that program, you'd have to have a degree, and then that course is also offered through UBC has their Sauder School of Business.
Yeah.
So that branch does like appraisals or appraiser training, real estate training, or property management. My brokerage course was done through them. So it would be very, very similar, but for somebody who enjoys like more analytics or some more hands-on type thing, right? Because you'd actually be going and visiting. They of course did some different things when it came to COVID and keeping people safe. But yeah, it would be similar. So the rules around that are a little bit, yeah, I guess, I don't know, stricter, but like for banking, for example, you wouldn't necessarily have to have a degree or a specific education, and then it would depend on what you were doing and then falling under those regulatory rules, right? So same thing with like investments, right? So there's different levels and tiers of investment advising, right? So you can get like a basic mutual fund license, or you could be a chartered financial analyst. And if you're looking for the biggest diploma that you can possibly get, that's what you want to go and do. Because I swear to you, it's like your whole wall. It's like this whole thing behind me. Like their diplomas are gigantic. So yeah, but appraising, that would be similar. House inspections, right? So inspections are a bit different. That's just a course that you would have to take. And there's a couple that I think there's 1 or 2 in Merit, one for sure. And then some from Kamloops that come out. But yeah, and appraising too is nice because that's something where you'd also be taken under another appraiser's sort of wing, and they would guide you through that process. So part of it, and similar to the investment side, is the hours that you've also logged, right? So you have to do a certain number of hours and applications and those types of things to be able to go through with it. So yeah, and there is not one in Merit. So I know, gosh, they're probably within all the different companies, like there's probably people out here like 2 or 3 days a week. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And if you like IT, and maybe you can figure out how to get all that automated valuation stuff, right, going. So yeah.
For sure.
Excellent. Okay. Well, Tricia, once again, we just want to really thank you for coming on with us and sharing a little bit about what you do and your world. And I know that I certainly learned a lot, and I might go sign up for an appraisal course right now.
No, right? Yes. I mean, appraisers. So right now, if you were going to do a rural property in Merit, an appraisal would cost a client probably about $800. A regular home, right, like would be about the cost would probably be about $400 or $500 to have your house appraised in Merit. So I mean, you're going to go and actually do it, and then have to write the report and do some different like analytics, but it's a pretty good coin to be made.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, like we said, thanks again for joining us, and we definitely appreciate your time. And I know that our students will definitely learn a lot from this. So thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
You betcha.
Thanks,
okay.
Trish.
All right. Take care. Good night.
Night.
Good night.